Uh, but I started out with 10 years old, 4-H and stuff like that, and then Boy Scouts, and then I was in the Navy for a while, so I was out of these. I've been in and out, so altogether probably 35, 40 years. But, you know, so anyway, I'm supposed to talk about swarms, which was the way they reproduce, basically, one of the main ways. I'm going to just make it pretty simple, right? A swarm is when they overpopulate an area, or they overpopulate their hive or whatever, and they want to procreate or expand. So whether the swarm is because of something that's happened, the tree is rotted out and it fell down or something, and then they want to move, or that the swarm is overpopulated and the beekeeper or whoever is not been, trying to keep the swarms down, which is hard to do sometimes. But anyway, basically a swarm comes out, usually the old queen takes about 50-60% of the bees with her. She'll go out, they all slide a swarm, they fill up with honey, they'll take off and go somewhere. Usually it's a few hundred feet or whatever from the hive, Anyway, basically they'll hang for a while while the scouts go out and do their searching around for another spot to live. Whether it be a tree, another trap, or whatever. So anyway, so the bee will come back, and you'll see the little dances and stuff on the bees, on them and everything else, and they actually communicate back and forth. Say, I got one over here that's a real good place to go. And they'll say, oh, I got one better over here, So they do this for a while. And sometimes the bee swarm will hang there, probably, I've seen it hang there only probably 10-15 minutes and then move right away, go somewhere else. And I've also seen them hang. I had one call I got one time, and it was way up on the top of a tree where I couldn't get to, and I kept the traps up, trying to get them to come down, everything else. I thought maybe I could get them to come out, and it was cold weather, it was early in the spring, too early really for swarms, and it had been raining. They were there 7 days. And the swarm kept getting smaller and smaller as the bees kept dying. And eventually, I went back one morning and there was no swarm anymore. And I'm assuming they died out, basically, because it got too small and it was another, 30-degree morning, and, they just couldn't make it. Now, the tree they came from was right next door. I knew where they came from. And the people would call me and said, we have bees here right by our porch. They always swarm out all the time. And I thought I could leave my trap there. They don't cooperate. Bees never listen to what you want to do them to. So anyway, swarms basically, you catch them in different ways. You get a call. Hopefully it's swarms of bees, not yellow jackets. You get a lot of them in the fall. You ask it, first off, if you get a call for a swarm, you're on the swarm list, the Missouri Beekeepers and Midwestern Hay Swarm list, you put your name on. Make sure you ask them questions. A lot of questions should be like, where are they? Are you sure they're bees? Can you take a picture of them if you can? It would be nice to send to you, text you a picture or whatever. The other thing is, how long have they been there? Did you spray them with insecticides trying to get rid of them? People do that. And if they've done that, you probably don't want them. So anyway, so you ask a few questions, try to find out what you can about it, and then pack up your stuff or have your stuff packed up and go after them. If they're hanging in a tree, hopefully they're low. I like them when they're, right there, because you just slide a box underneath and bang the tree, or bang the branch, or shake the branch, or if they allow you to cut the branch off and drop it in, And so, but if they're way up in a tree, I've got this lineman pole with a bucket, and I go up with that and pop, 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 and whoop, whoop, whoop a few times, bring them down and dump them in the hive. You have a hive set up, basically. I you bring a deep with me, the bottom board and everything on it, and with about half the hive full of frames. So you got room for to dump them into, right, basically. And dump them in, hit the tree a few more times, dump them in. Hopefully you got the queen. Usually if you got the queen, leave it sit there, and it don't take long, half an hour or so, you'll start seeing them all coming down out of the tree, and they'll go right in. And you know you got the queen, you're in good shape then. That's the easiest way. There's also cutouts, a little more trouble. I've done a few of those. Some of them work pretty good, some of them are a pain. You got an old shed or something like that. You take a panel off of it, or take the sheetrock down inside or whatever, and you cut all the comb out, rubber band into the frames, and then you end up doing different things like, I'm going to mess up your camera here. And basically, you end up taking the bees out, and then you end up hopefully catching the queen. If you find the queen, that's the first thing. Is find the queen, flip the queen, try to bring her, get her in there. You don't want to hurt her if you can. Take all the comb out, clean it out as best you can. Put it in your frame, put it in your thing. I always close up the front with for a while, so they all stay in there. And then I wait till after. Actually, I'm glad I go pick it up, I should say, because I leave it open for a while, make sure the rest of them will go in there. And when the rest of the flying bees will go in, then I put the screen across, close it up, so they then take it home that way. And usually leave it overnight with the screen on, sometimes part way into the next day, so that they get used to being in there. I usually have 10 frames of comb in there. I have the cut comb that I put in there, the pieces I put in there, I have a few empty comb, and I'll also drop a frame, if I've got it, a frame of honey in there also, so they've got some food in there, and go that route. That's cutouts. There's trees. I've had calls on trees. I've had tree services call me. Usually when they're dropped on a tree and the tree split open and the bees do not cooperate. I've multiple times I've caught them and put them in the hive, and they've all went back in the tree. I did it 3 times one time, and finally they disappeared. So, but you sometimes are successful that way. Cutouts work out sometimes pretty good. Trap outs. Now this is the other way you get swarms. This is a trap that I use. Basically, there's different ways of doing trap outs. Okay. Sometimes you can put a trap like this in an area, hang it into put it on I like to put them up in deer stands, or hang them on a tree or whatever. And I use a trap out similar to this. I've got some plywood ones I make that will have like 6 frames in, and there's this deep. Tom Seeley says that in the book Honeybee Biology, that you need to have about 1.5 cubic feet of space for bees to move into. Okay? And anything 1.5 is about the size of a deep. But if you give them a little extra space, especially if you're collecting a swarm, where they've swarmed from somewhere else and they want to move into one of your traps, they will move in, and there's a little extra space below. So I either use a 4-inch spacer, and I take a 4-inch spacer and put, I didn't bring any of this with me, but anyway, I take a 4-inch spacer and I have a trap door like this on it, and this will be down here at the bottom, and then I have a plywood bottom on it, on the spaces. So there's no entrance except for this. And they will go in there, hopefully, you know, in that space, and the swarm will move in. They have to have, they seem to have room to swarm into, and then they'll move up into the comb later. So I have this on the front, and then I'll leave it there, and if I've got a swarm in there, and I'll watch it, and you go back and check every day or so, and if you got a swarm, then you close it up, take it home. And the nice thing about this type of a swarm trap versus the 5-frame nuke or deep nuke or whatever you want to call it, is the fact that you can take it home, unhook it, open it up, okay? Take it all apart if I can remove it apart, okay? Take it apart, open it up, take your box of bees, they're all in the frames now, by now, and there's a few stragglers down there. Take your spacer off, set it right on the bottom board, set it back down, put your inner cover on, put your feeder on, and they're already in there. It's real simple. Use the existing material you've got. It's real easy. Like Roger said, if you know, why waste material if you got it? You know, use this. Now, I also didn't mention this, swarm lures. All right, there's different ways of swarm lures. You got the swarm lure like this Man Lake one, which has got a little ampule or whatever they call them, little plastic ampule things with lemongrass stuff in it. They say it goes, you know, keep refrigerated until you put them in. I just staple them in the back inside there when I put them in, put the traps out, and then about 3 months supposedly on that. Okay, if you want to make your own, good way to do it is get hold of some of these little nodule things, ampules, whatever they call them. You buy them online for 1,000 of them for $5 or whatever, you know. But anyway, 2 drops of anise oil, 10 drops of lemongrass oil. Basically, is the mix. Okay.
What was the first one?
Anise, A-N-N-I-S-E, I think it is anise. Anyways, anise oil, 2 drops of anise oil, and 10 drops of lemongrass oil, and put them in. What I do is I mix up a batch of it, and I'll take an eyedropper and fill a bunch of these little module things up. Okay. Also, you can go on to Beekeeping Supply Place and get Swarm Commander, which is a spray, which is good for a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Spray some in your hive. Spray some a little bit on the entrance, not a lot because you get too much overwhelming. It's a lemongrass mix. You also come get a gel. Now the spray lasts 3 or 4 weeks, whatever. The gel will last a little bit longer because it's a little thicker, and you buy an ounce thing for about the same price as the spray. Okay, so that's what you put in your traps. If you have any questions about traps, you're welcome to come see me. Now, the other thing I talked about when I started earlier was I talked about the trap out or cutouts, stuff like that, or trees, or whatever you want to talk about. Okay, I'm just going to get some stuff over here. All right, I made a vacuum. Again, using material that we have, it's reusable material. Okay, vacuum I have, again, is a base here, like this. Just a 1x4s with a solid bottom. Place to put your vacuum hose here. Okay. You put your deep box again, here with frames in with, again, if you're doing a trap off, you put what you cut out and put in with the rubber bands on the empty frames, and then you fill it on up with frames. Then you start you clean up your vacuum, okay? Again, put this on like this. This is a 1x4s again with a plywood top, and number 29 gauge or 1/8 inch screen. Stick your vacuum here. Put your 25-foot hose or whatever you got for pool hose, basically, pool vacuum hose, and put your vacuum here, and you've got an adjustment here, which you adjust for your flow. You don't want too much vacuum because the bees don't like to be, pinwheeled and bounced around too much, So you leave that open to start with, and if you don't have enough vacuum, you tend to just slightly move it tighter until you get picking up the bees without hearing them go bing, 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 So anyway, so you vacuum up, and especially in the cutout, you've got most of them in there already. Drag them in handfuls on whatever you do, and then vacuum the rest of them in. Close it up. When you get done, put your strap back on, tighten it up, take it home. And leave them in there for a little bit, because they got some of that honey you already took out of there for them, And this particular model works really well, because when you get home, back to the same thing. Take it off, put it on the bottom board, you're ready to go. Okay. They have other types of buckets, bucket traps, bucket vacuums, things like that. There's all sorts of different ways they do it, but as a Colorado vacuum was really neat. I'm going to build one of them one of these days. Anyway, I'm just spitballing here. Any questions?
Well, you talk a little bit about nuke versus doing the deep. We talk a little bit more about like what the cons of using a nuke versus a deep are, or the
a nuke. All right. First off, a deep is 1.5 cubic foot, whatever. If you use 2 mediums, you're talking about 1.7 or so with two mediums, something like that. Because you get your space, that these have to have so much space. Now, especially if it's a first swarm, cast-off swarm, first cactus swarm. If it's a main swarm, they want a bigger space. So they will not move into a small, I have a couple of nukes that I use for traps too, just regular nukes. But you won't see much into those until late in the season when you start getting the smaller swarms, and when you get seconds and third swarms. Okay, but so you want to get the space. You need in that book Tom Sealy's book Honeybee Democracy. There's also a publication he put out a little bit later about swarm traps and stuff like that, and it's got a bunch of information in there too. But basically, you want to get a big enough space that they want to move into it. And if you have a little space at the bottom, it leaves them room to move in and then gradually move up into the.
And so, but is that more of the trap side versus like you physically collecting a swarm, or
it's more of the trap size? Yeah.
Okay.
If I go to pick up a swarm in a tree, and they say it's a big swarm, well, you go there and it's the size of a grapefruit, yeah. If you get the size of a grapefruit, you don't need a big box. You just need a nuke.
But
if it's a huge swarm, and I've had swarms where I've had to actually have 2 boxes. And I mean, I picked up a swarm. It had been in a tree. It moved over to it was up too high, and it moved down. It came down and landed on the base of a tree. And I had to use 2 boxes to get pretty much all of them in. There was a lot of these. And I have also picked up a swarm. One time a lady called me, she said, I got a swarm of bees. And I said, where are they? And she said, in my birdhouse.
Yeah.
And I've got pictures of that. A little red house with
Wow.
a swarm of bees in it, with comb drawn and everything in it. But, you know, they're not going to survive very long in that small of a setup. You know. But I have pictures of that. So. But anyway, any other questions? Paul?
What time of year, like right now,
Now.
with crazy weather, they'll still be swarming anytime now?
Well,
Because I've seen drones.
they will start swarming now when it start warming up. They usually don't swarm too much when it's cold. Now we've had this cold spell. This next week or so it shouldn't be. I'm sorry. I'm in your way. But anyway, this cold spell and now we got the next few warm days. They should start swarming.
So you wouldn't put swarm traps out right now?
I'm putting swarm traps out. I've got swarm traps out.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, Bob has already caught a swarm. Last week or whatever it was. I don't know how big it was, but
It was medium.
medium.
I think it was in an area where there were a lot of trees. It was by the high school in Olathe where they had the shooting.
Yeah, same. So they're out there already.
I think
Yes, sir.
your plywood there that you've made your extra accessories with, those are just OSB or is?
Yeah, I just use
Is
those.
MFD safe too, or
Pardon me?
have you ever used MFD? Is that safe?
I have. I like to use that if I'm building bottom board pieces, stuff like that. You know, where it's a little more, you know, a little more,
More rigid.
more rigid, more moisture resistance. Yeah. But like I say, just plain OSB and paint it. I paint it with a primer, and then I paint it with a oil-based primer, and then I paint it with a. I use oil-based. Now I even paint. That was a man leg bottom board there. I even paint the inside of my bottom boards too, at the bottom, because I figured, you know, even for one thing, when it's going to have a lot of moisture there, debris and everything else will be in that. And the other thing is when you paint that, they're only walking across it a little bit. They're not, you know, and there's a lot of airflow there and everything else. So I don't worry too much about that. So, any other questions?
In the back.
Yes, sir.
What about your trap? You said something like 4-inch.
Yeah, I didn't bring one with me. In fact, I don't have any. I had to make up some more because I got everything out there already. That's why I use a medium for about the bottom spacer. The spacer, the idea behind putting the spacer in is you have your frames hanging in there, and I usually take one old, maybe too old, but old 5, 6, 7, 10-year-old frames, right? That are really hard, black,
Right.
dirty, you know. I hang them in there because I've got wax moths won't bother. Wax moths don't like when they're that old, you know. And hang one of them in there, and then I'll hang my, you know, the rest of it just empty
Your
going.
lemongrass and everything.
Lemongrass, yeah.
So the 4-inch would be like a 2x4 square?
Yeah, or just make it 4-inch, just like just like a super, you know. Except you just use a 4-inch board. That's all you need.
Then where's your, where would you put your,
Your spacer, I mean this thing. I put it right where I want one up the front. Now on a 4-inch, you're not gonna. It'll stick up a little bit, but it don't make much difference. I've also got some of these that are only about 3 inches. They're 2.8 inches or whatever. They're mostly plastic ones. I use a lot of them but the only problem with that is they only have a 1 inch or 0.95 inch hole.
yeah.
You know, and you want to have a hole in there that, you know, the bees will like going in and out.
So basically, you can take a drill and just drill out a part of your plywood.
Yeah, but you're all right inside, right through the pine, yeah. And you also want to, when you drill your hole, whatever hole it is,
I usually drill 2 1-inch holes side by side, like that, and then put a screw up through the middle of it, so you don't have birds, stuff making nests in there too. They'll get in there if they decide to. Or you put some 1/2-inch screen in the back, yeah, inside.
So where you were saying?
Yeah, push you put 1/4 inch, right? I just put 1/2 inch.
Well, I'll put it on the outside and I'll bend about a 1/2 inch to an inch out.
Okay.
Kind of give them a
Little lip to land on.
Yeah,
There you go. Okay.
Are you usually successful with traps?
Traps, pretty good. I'm not as good as my brother-in-law. I'll tell you, I talk about him all the time. That guy can trap bees. He's over in Linwood, Kansas, and 2 years ago, he started trapping bees. I told him how to do it, and he started doing it. He put out 7 traps and caught 17 swarms or something like that. He would multiples three times in each trap, some of them. It's crazy. I put out the traps that same year and I had 3. And he traps. He puts them out every year, and he don't run many hives. He just gives them. He gives them to my niece. She's starting bees. Gives them to different people. He sets up different people and lets them get started on bees. But he just keeps trapping them.
pretty good business is to be near a commercial beekeeping yard and put out swarm traps.
Swarm traps, yeah.
And just sell.
Well, where I'm located, there's quite a few bees. Bob's got bees by me. Christine's got bees. Christine Polaski's got bees. Yeah. There's another gentleman up the road. There's one south of me too. Yeah, there's. We figured out one time, probably within a 2-3 mile radius of us or whatever, there were probably 50 or 60 hives. So.
Ian and I counted them. There was over 90.
When you count them, yeah, okay. So there's a lot of hives around us.
So the size that you trap with is at least 2 units.
I like to. First off, if I'm going to trap a swarm, I want a nice swarm. The birdhouse swarms are not very good. So the bigger the box, not super big, but like I said, a deep and a 4-inch bottom. That's about ideal, because you're talking 1.6, 1.7, cubic foot, right, which is 140 liters is a regular box or something like that, But anyway, I don't know. Huh? 40 liters, okay, not 140, 40 liters, right. Okay, right. But anyway, any other questions? Any questions for Roger? We cut him a real short here.
Roger, would you mind doing like the quick demo of that after the meeting closes? We can just come over and check it out.
Okay.
Any other questions for him?
Any other questions about anything?
Thank you very much.